Welcome to the Tuned In podcast, where we will dive into the mindset, spirituality, practical tools, and tips for making you the best version of yourself on and off the stage. I'm your host, Natalia, and I'm a holistic vocal coach and a mindset coach. So let's dive in today's episode in 3, 2, 1. I'm so excited for this first episode of Tuned In. I am beyond thrilled to spend every single week with you, loves. Either if you're watching me on YouTube or you are listening to me wherever you are, it's such an honor to be in your ears and spend this time together because this is something that I was craving for a long time, to have this deeper connection with you. And I feel this is our time once a week to talk about everything that is not really spoken about, right? If it's spirituality, if it's mindset, if it's personal stories, if it's bringing people that I admire, that I think more people needs to know about, and so much more. And this is where we're going to do all these things and more. So thank you so much. Today we are going to talk about my personal story, and I'm so excited to share it with you. And I have to tell you that my story is definitely, I thought at the beginning nobody really wants to listen to my story, what, like, how this person that you hear and see these days became, and my journey of becoming that person. But I really wanted to inspire wherever you are in your journey. If you are becoming a singer, or you're just singing for, as a hobby, or you just thinking about singing, or not even singing, you just somehow drawn into my world and you are interested more in the mindset work, and you wanted to know how to create the life that I'm currently living. And this is why I wanted to share this story, because I want you to know that wherever you are in your journey, if it's in the dream state all the way to, or in that middle of that journey where you are currently facing so many obstacles, that this is just one kind of station, and this is not what's going to determine where you're going to end. And to be honest with you, I just begun. But I want to take you back. I was born in Belarus, in Minsk. It's a capital, right? It's a big city. And my parents, Diana and Igor, are my beautiful parents. They had me when they're very young, when they were 21, and I'm an only child. So I was born to young parents that didn't know what they're doing. And when I was 3 years old, we immigrated to Israel, and with my grandma, my both parents, and we were actually stationed right into Ramat Aviv, Tel Aviv, which considered to be a very rich neighborhood, you would say. And that's kind of like the paradox, because we were completely the opposite of rich. We were actually pretty poor. I was sleeping in a suitcase. Remember, we just didn't have a lot. And I definitely had clean clothes. I had food on my table, and of course, a roof on my head. But there was never more than what's needed. And my mom became very, very frugal with money. She was always kind of saving, and always, there's no such thing like like spurging. Like, there's no, like, you just buy something just because you want to. It's only if you need it. um and that's pretty much my childhood, right? I was the only Russian girl in my elementary school, and even high school. Actually, I remember it was like maybe two people that was Russian, and I always wanted to fit in. And I remember that. And since I was a little girl, 6 years old, I always wanted to sing, and I was singing everywhere I could. And I remember that I was so shy coming to all, whatever, if it's any, like, if it's a new school, if it's like an after school program, whatever, I was so shy. I would not even talk to anybody. So my mom decided to sign me up for vocal lessons and course. And this has pretty much changed my life, right? This decision, because that was honestly the best outlet for me as a young immigrant kid that just didn't know who she is, and she just didn't fit into nowhere, right? She didn't feel Russian. I didn't feel Israeli enough. I just didn't feel belong to nowhere, right? But the only place I felt belonged to was my musical world, right? The place where I can express my voice. And when you're in a chorus setting, in a choir setting, and you share your voice with other people and you sing in harmony and you feel that unity, and that is just this is it's one of the most incredible feelings. And that's why I love so much choir, and I recommend to every singer to go out there and join a choir, because although you're a soloist, and yes, it's completely different singing, it's still going to teach you so much of what it means to be part of the big picture, right? And to be and kind of like a part of the harmony and not just the leading singer. So since that day that my mom signed me up for vocal lessons and also choir, I was singing everywhere, everywhere I could. And I was the singer of the school, and every special occasion, I was the one who's singing the national anthem and singing all the kind of like holiday songs and whatnot. That was me. And this pretty much, I was singing in all these settings. And when I was 16 years old, my choir teacher told me that I have a voice for opera and I should definitely pursue it. And I was kind of hesitant to it because, let's face it, opera wasn't really my thing. It was kind of like that picture in my head, that big, the fat lady who sings, right, with the two horns and just like yelling on top of her lungs, just like it wasn't my thing. And I just didn't understand it. But I was like, you know what? One thing I remember that somebody said, that if you can sing opera, you can sing anything. And that's what really intrigued me. I wanted to be able to sing anything I wanted. So I decided to take vocal lessons from, let's say, a professional opera singer and take it further. And I did. And in the meantime, I was part of the group. It's a very famous group called the Neighbors of Chich. It's a really weird name, but Chich was the mayor of Tel Aviv back then, and we are pretty much his neighbors, right? And we are singing all these originals and musicals, and it was just such a great opportunity and to learn all the kind of the triple thread, right? The singing, the acting, the dancing, and how to create a production and from start to finish. And we were just like this one big group that were just touring around the world, and we were touring around Israel. And I was there literally every second after school, and we would go there on weekends just to just, finish and rehearsing and performing as well. It was just like nonstop, but it was literally the best time. I just remember it, one of my favorite times since I was 13 all the way till I graduated high school. So that was that. So I was singing choir, starting pursuing opera, and also doing musical theater. And at 18 in Israel, you are, not, it was not mandatory so much for women. If you really wanted, you could kind of get away with it. But I decided I did want to get into the army, and I wanted this experience for myself. I knew it's going to really teach me a lot and be a little bit more independent. And I tried to audition for the band, but they just didn't need me, because back then we had actually one of the biggest wars, the second Lebanon war. And yeah, they just placed me into the medical field, and that's where I ended up in the hospital Bellingson, where I was accepting injured soldiers. And I was almost like it's a very vague in a big role because you do many different things, depends what's needed, but it could be administration, it could be social worker, almost like a nurse as well, and just like really taking care of the soldiers whenever in that um, environment, right? Because this is it's a regular hospital, and you do need the presence of the army, and we were representing the army basically there. And it was very rough. I'm not gonna lie. Those 2 years really taught me so much. I was stationed in two hospitals, one in Billington, one in another city. It's a bigger hospital. And, seeing injured soldiers, it could be not just physically, right? We had mental, we had also cancer patients, we had different type of basically kids that they're going through so many traumatic experiences. And I would every single week I would sing for them, and that was one of the my favorite things to do. Like once every day we are supposed to go and really visit them, give them a piece like a paper, or and just talk to them and see how they're doing, making sure they're taken care of well. And I also sang for them, and that was something that I really really love to do, and that's how I kind of brought my talent and who I am. And while I was doing that, I decided that I was pursuing and learning how to sing opera, to go to the best schools that I know in New York. And my teacher that was teaching me back then, her teacher was the one of the biggest names in New York City, and she's a wonderful teacher. So I thought, right? But she was, she was a big name, and I wanted to be her student. And I decided that yes, I'm right now in the army, yes, I'm serving, but I still want to not forget about myself and my talent. And yes, we're going through a war, and there was actually two wars, but I just was very determined to make it happen. So I got myself, I really researched what I needed to do to enroll myself to the best schools here. What are those best schools? Getting the TOEFL exam, the SATs, audition tape, everything that is needed to get that together and submit it to all these schools. Manhattan School of Music, it was Manus, it was different schools. And I just did it. And I remember how determined I was. And I was, you would think, like, how did you have time? And I remember I was very intentional in my time. I was reading books about self development, and that's what got to really, that's what I got into this whole self development world, is through that, right? Um, and understanding how time is so precious, and we are in control of our time. And when we're intentional with our time, and we're not just like waiting for having time to do something, and we're just saying, you know what? I'm going to make it happen. And even if I have 2 hours in a day, I'm going to make the most of those 2 hours. I'm going to be super focused, and I'm going to put everything I can in those 2 hours. So that's what I did. You know, if it's weekends, if it's every single once a week, I would go to my teacher. She was living in a completely different city. So it's like an hour and a half drive. And then, it's taking lessons and obviously practicing every single day, going to the gym. That was very important for me. I was a little overweight back then. And I really wanted to, so look the part and feel good. And also, studying English and getting all the things that I need to do in order to get this audition tape, and actually performing as an opera singer, because I never performed as an opera singer to the people. So getting that experience under my belt, and all these things I did while I was in the military service, and I was very proud of myself. So I submitted all the paperwork and the audition tapes, and I got a call back from three schools that wanted me to come and do a live audition. And I was so excited. And I remember, oh my goodness, it was in the middle of a war. And I remember that I had to go to these auditions. And to be a soldier and go overseas, it's a very rare thing. You need to get a special permission. And plus, it's a war. So yeah, good luck, right? But I remember I was begging every single day to my commander saying, listen, this is my chance. And if I'm not going to do this, if I'm not going to fly, I would miss the whole entire year, right? Because I need to resubmit and do the whole procedure all over again, pay all this money all over again and try next year. And I'm just going to lose a whole year. And I remember with tears in my eyes, I said, please just let me go for 1 week and I'll be back. I promise. I'm not just going to leave. And after all this, she said, okay. And she said, I would never be in the way of somebody's dream. And I remember her name. Her name is Maya. And I'm so grateful for her because if not for her, I would not be here, truly. So here I am with my grandma. My grandma is one of my favorite, she's my everything. She's the one who always believed in me and my talent. And she decided to come with me, right? Because it's my first time going to New York City by myself. It's a lot. And we went together and I auditioned for all those three schools. And I got into two. I got into Manhattan School of Music and I got into CUNY, Brooklyn College. And the teacher that was teaching, she was teaching in both schools, and she gracefully um, accepted me for to her specific studio that also is part of CUNY. And that was wonderful for me, right? And I was the youngest students she had, and and I was like, I was so happy and I was so ambitious. I was so ready and wanted to eat it. Like I just wanted to make it as the biggest opera singer in the world. That was my goal, and this is what I did. And coming back from the arm, coming back to the army, finishing everything. Literally, I remember like 2 months after I booked a flight, I found a place to stay. And here I am in a big city with two suitcases in the middle of Brooklyn. I remember going there. It was very early in the morning. I landed very early, like around 5 a.m. And I remember going to Midwood. That was the neighborhood that I found a place in. And I found this apartment randomly in Brooklyn. And that was interesting experience because here I am going to the right address. Nobody's answering me, right? I'm knocking on the door and nobody's answering me. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I probably got scammed, right? I sent like I didn't send the whole money, right? I sent only a deposit, but ooh, probably I have nowhere to stay. I have no family in America. I have nothing, literally nothing. I didn't even have a cell phone because back then, remember, we still had like the public phones. And I remember I was calling my mom. I had I bought this card from the deli store right across the street. And I was like, I didn't even know how to even ask for it, right? It was like international call, da, 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 and they gave me this card, and here I am calling, and I'm telling my mom, "Mom, I don't know where I am." And mind you, I never seen, and it's not in a bad way. I just never seen African Americans. I never seen. It's not something that we had in Israel, unfortunately, right? And I was surrounded by them. I didn't know, and I was so scared. I was so like I was in a completely different world. I just felt completely like lost. And she said, don't worry. If anything, just we'll find an hotel or something. You're going to be okay. And I decided to go ahead, try again. I was buzzing at the door and the girl answered me. So thank God that was not a scam and everything was good. She was just sleeping because it's early in the morning. But basically, this is it. And here I am in Brooklyn in this complete different world. And I remember crying almost every single day because I'm away from my family. I have nobody here. I didn't know a single soul. I didn't have proper even English to write and read. It's a college level English. It's not just like, hey, how's it going type of English, right? You need to know how to express yourself and write these essays and all these structures, and it was just a lot. It was a lot of things that I had to catch up. And I remember taking all these classes and like studying so much, and at the same time being the youngest in my vocal coach studio. I had a lot of stuff to catch up. If it's the languages, if it's just everything that takes to be an opera singer. And if you are an opera singer, you probably can relate. There's so much work behind the scenes. If it's learning the language, if it's learning the style of the music, if it's learning the music itself, if it's fitting into some kind of like vocal technique and sounding normal and like combining all those things and learning by heart. And there's like so many things on top of being also a college student that it was just a lot. And I remember that after every lesson, I just came back home more defeated. And I felt like it's just a lot. I was mentally, verbally abused as well, and that's something that we don't talk a lot in our world. But when you are so, you're new and you're so green, it's so easy to step on you and um, tell you all the things and make you feel small. And it got me. I just felt my voice is leaving me. Literally, I just didn't want to sing anymore because I felt like I'm just not good enough. I'm not, no matter what I do is not good enough. No matter how I try, it's not good enough. And I just can't get the whole vocal technique thing. And it's just, everything is just a lot. And I just remember there was just so much. And I remember going back home into my room, and my roommate was a drug addict, and she was doing very sketchy things. And let's say she wasn't like the best role model that I can actually speak to, right? And I avoided every contact I could with her because just didn't want anything to do with her. Um, I just remember going through all my files and my notes and everything, and I just saw that submission letter that I had to submit. It was just writing why I want to be in that college. And I wrote my story and how I want to be and impact people with my voice and fulfilling my dream and all the things that I wanted. And I remember that girl, and I remember that innocence, and I remember that just this pure desire to share my voice and to do it and not to be afraid and not let all the rules and all the things and all this bureaucracy and all the things that people think I should sound like or be like to determine who I am. And I remember that was a very important moment because that's where I decided that I'm going to take my voice and my life in my own hands. I'm not going to let anybody else dictate who I am and how should I be and sing. I'm going to learn what it means, this whole vocal technique thing. I'm going to learn what is that. I'm going to learn how to be the best performer and person in and off stage. And that's where my life changed. It's exact moment when I took that responsibility and I decided that I'm no longer going to be a victim. I'm no longer going to play small. I'm no longer going to come and kind of like shy away from who I am and try to fit in and try to like please everybody around me. I'm done. I'm here to express and live my life to the fullest, unapologetically. And I put my hands on every book you can imagine. If it's vocal technique, if it's learning from different singers, YouTube was it kind of started back then. It was 10, 11 years ago, right? So learning about different interviews and learning from different singers and just learning as much as I could. And I took lessons from Alexander Technique, and I went to different events, and it was, if it's Tony Robbins, and it was different things that really taught me how to be more mindful. And so, on top of all of that, I also had a significant relationship that ended up, in betrayal. And I did a lot for that person. Again, that wanting to please people around me to get approval and love. And long story short, I left United States. I decided after my undergrad that I'm coming back to Israel. I'm done with my dream. I'm gonna follow my true heart desire and love of my life, which I thought. And I went back to Israel. I was there for a year. I was miserable. Didn't really I just couldn't find myself after you living in New York, going back to, Israel is not it's a smaller town, obviously, but it's not like it's a modern, and Tel Aviv is like little, Miami, a little New York, but it still wasn't the energy that New York has to offer. And we decided to come back to New York. And after a while, he cheated on me, and I decided that I couldn't do it for myself. And that's where my life changed. I had a little dog, and I just slept on the couch with my friends. I just paid her money to to just be somewhere because I just couldn't find an apartment, with a little dog, and it's not that easy. And I was, studying, and I was working also part-time, but it was not enough money for me to actually rent an entire apartment for myself. So I was, renting this little, half of a living room to sleep there. And it was really, really hard. Now I'm kind of like smiling and talking about like nothing, but it was a very hard moment in my life where I really felt like the ground beneath me is just it's just there's nothing, there's nothing solid that can hold me. And I had no home, I had no family, I had no, like, I had my friends, but it wasn't that I could have that person or that family or that anchor that could really stabilize me, right? And that's where I found relief in meditation and going back to self development. And I went to Tony Robbins' event, Unleash the Power Within. And this is where my journey started. That's where I feel like this is where my alignment, when you're going through something so traumatic, so hard, that's where you crack open. That's where you find that inner power. And those two moments where, my vocal teacher abused me, and I lost my voice, and I reclaimed my power back in that moment where my fiance cheated on me and I was left alone, homeless basically. That's where I reclaimed my power back again. And that's where I was reborn pretty much, because that person that was cheated on, or that, I just, that's not who I am anymore. I just decided that's not the person I want to be. And I reclaimed that power back. And after committed to meditation and going into the mindset work and doing all the work and started posting my videos online and starting teaching people and opening my studio and teaching people as well, and starting my duo Voce Nova, which is combining pop and opera. And we went to America's Got Talent, and now finding the love of my life. And we have a beautiful family. We're married with a beautiful kid named Michael. And now I can tell that I'm living my absolute best life. I sing exactly what I want. I have the voice that I always dreamed to have. I have a life and a purpose that I'm so passionate and connected to. I have a community of people that I'm absolutely in love with. I have so much right now. And that person that going through all these hardship, and of course, there are so many little things that happen along the way. I'm just talking about those, big monumental events, but all these little things that happen along the way are what made me who I am. And as cliche as it sounds, but going back to owning and taking full responsibility for my life and understanding that everything around me is a reflection of who I am. And we're going to talk about more in further episodes, and about what it means and how we can claim that power back, how we can really make our own rules and have the life that we want come to us in the most effortless way. This is what I'm so passionate about, everything that I do, and this is why I love teaching and helping singers so much, because when you gain that power, you feel you can fly. You can feel like everything is possible, and everything is possible. And it's very exciting. So, thank you so much for joining me for whatever, how long that was, and listening to my story. And again, it's not easy to share, those things. But it's so important for me for you to see, hopefully, yourself in one of those situations where I described, and knowing that you can come out of this situation, whatever that is, so much more stronger, so better, and now let it define who you are, and always redefine who you are and claim your power and determine what you want and go for it. And some people will say, oh, you didn't really make it, you're not really a famous singer, but it's not what it's all about. It's about the journey and becoming the person that I am today. That is the dream. That is the end goal, right? It's not the fame and fortune and the millions of dollars. That's not what it's all about. It's the person you become along the way that nobody can take away from you. And this is why I'm so, so proud. I have to say, I'm proud of myself. I'm proud of that woman that I became, that is still has a big heart, that loves deeply, that shares deeply, that does everything she does with her full heart and soul, no matter what. And I want you to be part of the person you are today, no matter where you are. You are exactly where you're meant to be and needed to be. And the best is always yet to come for you. I really believe in this. So thank you again for listening with me. And I am so excited for our next episode. We're going to dive into more mindset, more spirituality, more practical kind of tips and tricks and tools, everything on stage and off stage. And you'll see this is going to be such it's not going to be a random type of podcast, but it's definitely going to be, we're going to talk a lot of different aspects that I know that's going to be very interesting for you, and it's going to open your mind from wherever you are to something bigger. So, as always, feel free to share this episode if you found this helpful and inspirational. And you can always find me on my social, nataliamusic.online, on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and of course, YouTube. And yes, with that, guys, thank you so much for listening. And I'll see you in our next episode.